Hello everybody and welcome back to the Leeds Lens for your Leeds United news show. Now, we've got quite a bit to get into today, actually. There's been quite a bit to talk about regarding Daniel Farke's press conference, injury news, talking about the transfer situation, talking a bit about some young players potentially featuring in the first team soon as well. So we'll talk all about that. We're also going to discuss a bit about this Elan Melier link, because I've actually got a feeling what we should do with Elan Melier at this moment in time, which I haven't seen anyone say online yet. So I'm bringing some breaking news from my head about what we should do with Elan Melier. So we'll talk all about that as well. Obviously, if you could help the channel by dropping a like, subscribe, all that good stuff. Naturally, like I always says, does massively help the channel. Of course, the transfer window's not on at this moment in time, so I do need everyone who does watch the video. If you could help the channel by dropping a like, subscribe, all that good stuff. More than ever, it massively helps me because I'm trying to find a way to make up for the natural lack of viewership that you naturally get when the transfer window's not on. That is the life of doing this sort of stuff. So if you could do that, that would be fantastic. Scooby says, won't help with throw-ins, but hope it means Nmecha time. Potentially it does mean Stach time. There's a couple of options actually with the Stach thing, which I want to talk about as well. In fact, let's start with the Stach news now you brought up, Scooby. So what do I think about the Stach news? Well, look, obviously this is a negative. And for this sort of situation regarding him, he's apparently got a hip injury and is expected to miss the next 2 games. And I actually think when you look at the next game, particularly the Forest game, when I look at their strengths and what Forest's strengths are, in my opinion, I'm looking straight at that midfield. I'm looking at likes of Morgan Gibbs-White. I'm looking at likes of Elliot Anderson. I'm actually looking at likes of Sangare as well, who's had a pretty good season so far for Nottingham Forest. But mainly, obviously, Elliot Anderson and Morgan Gibbs-White, who I think are 2 fantastic players. So when you're looking at the part of the team you probably don't want them to, or don't want injuries in, it is probably the midfield. However, luckily, of all positions in the team at this moment in time, actually the centre midfield position is probably our most, probably where the most depth is. I mean, you've got sort of, all right, Stach's out, but we've still got Longstaff you can bring in. You could still bring in Gruev. We do actually have options, and I do think there's a potential where we can switch system going into this game at the weekend and look at a different, obviously, way of playing. And I think we could potentially move to a 3-4-3 and play Brennan Otte and Brendan Aronson in the team. We've seen that before, and he's used Noah Okafor, but I'd like to see maybe a go with Brennan Otte up there. And then obviously Aronson starts sort of on the left-hand side. He can cut into that right foot, and Brennan Otte maybe starts on the right-hand side, and that's how we play. And then in possession, obviously Aronson drops further in, and it makes us sort of back into sort of a 3-5-2 maybe with Brennan Otte just playing off Dominic Calvert-Lewin. So that's the way I like it. I also, when we talk about this as well, there was a lot of rumours going into today that sort of Dominic Calvert-Lewin had been injured. A lot of rumours that obviously Joe Roden had got an injury. Well, truthfully, they were just rumours, and they were absolute tripe. So that is important. But with Stach, look, he's naturally a miss, and I think he's come on strength for strength since we've moved to this 5-back system. I know, obviously, naturally, probably would have done quite well in a 4-3-3 as well, but for me, he wasn't playing amazingly well until we switched to this 5-back. But what it's allowed him to do is, I think, it's allowed him to progress further in the pitch, I think get more involved in the attack. And it's also as well, we know he's got that quality in terms of on the ball. And we know obviously he's important for us in terms of he's got height for defending set pieces. That's what I always talk about with Stach. That's a huge importance. But also taking set pieces. Obviously he does do them really good in-swinging corners from the left-hand side, swinging in, which have obviously been a real sort of substance for our goals so far this season. But we do have a player in Longstaff, if he was to pick with Longstaff in the midfield, who we've seen we've scored corners from with Longstaff taking before. I remember, was it the West Ham game when I think we scored a header from Rodon from a Longstaff corner? So there is potential with Longstaff taking them. I don't think he's got the technique of a Stach, and I don't think he's as technically gifted as a Anton Stach is, in my personal opinion. But I do think of all players to be injured, yes, it would be nice to have your best midfield going up against a pretty good Forest midfield. But in the same breath, as I said, we do have options in that midfield. Worst case scenario, as I said, we've got Nmecha in there, we've got Gruev in there, and we've got Longstaff. So if you need to pick, even if you need to pick 3 of them, because you want to play maybe a sort of 3-5-2 system with Aronson just off your 9 as such, then you still can do that. You've still got options in a way to do that. Jacob says, I'd put Aronson back into the 8 and Okafor up front just for Friday, maybe not against Chelsea. Yeah, I agree with you in terms of that's how I play. I think especially with the home game being against Forest, I'd go at them. But I think the way to do it, I don't think Okafor's been that great for a while. So I'd like to see Nonto or Buonanotte be given a go personally in that position. And if it was me, I would go with Buonanotte. I just think he's this level before. He's more recently delivered than a Wilfred Gnonto has. He actually had quite a decent season last year with Leicester, obviously, Buonanotte. I know he obviously tailed off at the end, but he had a bit of a weird relationship with Ruud van Nistelrooy from all accounts. But actually, when Steve Cooper was there, who I still don't think is a particularly good manager for this level, Steve Cooper was actually pretty well with him. I think he got like 5 goals in his sort of first 10 games or something with Steve Cooper. So I do think Buonanotte is a really good signing. And if I'm saying that, then we should be playing him, in my personal opinion. So I would bring Buonanotte into the team, but we'll have to see how he goes with that. Gibson White says, evening to you too, mate. Nice to see you in the chat. Scooby says, arguably agree, Jacob. Only with Willie instead of Okafor. His nose twitches near goal and he loves having a crack with either peg. Yeah, look, I'm not against the Gnonto shouts. I think that's a good shout. And obviously the benefit of that would be you would allow sort of Aaron to stay on that right-hand side and Gnonto can play on the left. Whereas obviously if Buonanotte comes in, naturally you'd have to move Aronson onto the left. So that I do get that rationale, but for me, I do want to see Buonanotte given a run out. I really do. I think he's got a lot to offer this team. Jacob says, I think Gnonto better, but Okafor will be much more physical against Murillo and Milenkovic. Fair enough, mate. I think that's fair enough. Anyway, that's the update with Anton's stat. The other person missing is obviously Lucas Nmecha, but I think a lot of us expected that, so I don't want to talk about that too much. It's a massive loss that he's out as well. He's a huge benefit off the bench, and obviously at times he could allow you to go 2 up front with Calvert-Lewin and Nmecha, which we saw worked really well against Chelsea. But he's obviously missing. However, some massive news actually, which we didn't expect, is that Jakob Bijol, and James Justin and Dan James have all been in team training this week and all could be involved for the game on Saturday. So, look, that is huge news because I think Bijol's been a huge miss for Leeds United. I think we haven't really got anyone of that profile. Maybe you could argue Bornau's a bit like that profile, but fundamentally, we haven't really got a massive profile like that in the team, maybe outside of Bijol. I think him being out has been a bit of a problem for us, and I think we'd have coped better fundamentally against Arsenal if Bijol would have been in the team. So I think him being back, hopefully, will be a positive. And I do actually think from his quotes today, he will start. I know he said he's touch and go, but Farke's always said if they're in team training, usually they're able to feature in match day squads, especially if you need him to. So I actually expect that Bijol will come straight back in. And having Dan James back is always a positive, naturally. I don't think he fits into the 11 at this moment, but it's naturally a positive. And of course, James Justin being able to play as well is a huge positive because it means worst case scenario if Bijol's out, we don't have to play ball now and you can actually put Justin into a back 3 and move Rodon into that middle centre back role. Farke obviously sees Gnonto as an impact player. It gives Tanaka or Buonanotte opportunities. I don't think he'll go with Tanaka personally. I think if he plays 3 in midfield, he'll go Gruev, Longstaff and Ampadu. But I actually think he might do 2 in midfield and put Aronson in the midfield 3. And then, of course, I think he'll probably go with Gruev. I think he'll go Ampadu and Gruev as your midfield 2, personally. I think Buonanotte is the most similar profile we've had to Pablo Hernandez since he left. I completely agree, mate. And I actually think, and I said this when he came into the football club, I think in terms of a technical basis and a technical mind and sort of how we can open up a door, I think he's got the best creative mind in our Leeds United team at this moment. Probably got the best sort of football IQ in the team as well, which is why I think it's such a good signing. To bring someone in January who's got the best IQ in your team, I think it's a huge positive. I honestly do think Buonanotte will be a really good signing. And when I look at the games we've got coming ahead, when we've got Sunderland's at home, we've got Wolves at home, we've got Burnley at home, all these games that we've got at home coming, they're the perfect games for Buonanotte. Maybe it's not the perfect game when we've got Villa away, or when we're playing Man City, or when we're playing Chelsea away, but actually in them games where you want to open up a pocket and they might be sitting in a low block, maybe accepting a 0-0, perfect for Buonanotte to get on the ball, start feeding them passes through and hopefully slip through a pass that could hopefully be a game-breaking pass for us and a line-breaking pass that causes the goal to occur. Dan James off the bench and run at the Forest defence. Yeah, I agree with that, Miller. Anyway, so that's the update regarding the injury news. In terms of Elan Melier then, now I don't want to talk too much about Melier because truthfully, his time at Leeds United is coming to an end, there's no doubt about it. The club are not going to give him a new contract. But it's been reported today by the Daily Mail. It's also been said by TalkSport, but not TalkSport, Team Talk. But truthfully, the Daily Mail are a better outlet in terms of getting news right, from what I've noticed, than Team Talk. So they've been reporting that Melier has been holding talks with the Beşiktaş after their move for Lucas Perri collapsed. So it's been a battle of our keepers. I'd be more than happy for him to take both, in truth. But it looks like they are going to be looking at a sort of Elan Melier move. Obviously, Elan Melier is out of contract in the summer, so you would expect it. He'll obviously leave in the summer now. for no fee, which is pretty crap considering where he was. And I think there has got to be a conversation at some point around the failures with Elan Melier, and there's a few other players in that. You could put Jack Harrison definitely in that category as well, where they've gone from players at really high levels of stock at the football club and in a really good place, and where you could get really good monetary value for both of them. And we're going to end up losing probably on both, either on the cheap or in Melier's case, actually on the free. And that is poor from the football club. Now, of course, it was a different ownership at that moment in time, and it's not something I'm going to throw the 49ers under the bus for at all. But we should have done better with Melier. We should have got some money for him, and to lose him on a free and have him sort of rotting away on the bench for a year as well and paying his wages is just a garbage situation, really. And I was actually thinking about today when I was at work, and I was when I saw the link when I was sort of in my lunch break, and I thought, do you know what we should do with Melier, really? We should terminate his contract. We should do what Raheem Sterling, they've done with Chelsea, have just done with Raheem Sterling, where they've terminated his contract. Because if we can say to Melier now, we'll terminate your contract right now, we'll pay half of your wages straight up front to you. And then what we'll do is you can then go sign for Beşiktaş right now, and you can go and play for them. And then obviously you'll get his wage as well. But that would allow Leeds United to not lose as much money on Melier as they're going to do just paying his wages week in, week out. So if I was Leeds United, to save a bit of money, because he is on good money, I'd be trying to negotiate a termination of contract. And also, I think that's the best case for Melier as well, because Melier then gets to go and play for Beşiktaş straight away. He doesn't have to sort of sit around at Leeds United doing absolutely nothing and not being anywhere near team squads. We didn't have any of that crap. So I think the best case scenario for Leeds, really, is that we try to terminate his contract. I think that's what we should do. To think of the money we were offered for Melier, it's criminal. Harrison as well. Yeah, I know, I completely agree, mate. We really messed up there. We really did. But hopefully he can get on his merry way. He can go to Beşiktaş. Hopefully they go and buy Perri, in my opinion, in the summer as well. That would be ideal. Get them both off, ideally. And then we can sort of move on and hopefully look at another new keeper, if that's James Trafford, which a lot of you guys like, or whoever you guys will go for. In the summer, obviously linked to Milinkovic-Savic as well. Obviously, I think is he in Napoli now, Milinkovic-Savic? So I don't think he's probably going to be an option. But there'll definitely be keepers that are options for Leeds in the summer. And I still sort of maintain that that's probably what we should do. But yeah, Melier for me, get that contract terminated and sort of, as I said, best of both parties, get him out of the football club. We don't spend as much money on wages, and he goes and gets the extra wages with Beşiktaş as well early. Anyway, let's talk a bit. Farke was asked today about transfers, and I thought, look, I'm going to save that till the end of the show, because truthfully, we have talked about transfers for basically a whole month now. So I didn't want to talk loads about transfers, but he was asked about it, so I did want to bring it up. And he basically got asked about the centre-back position. The reason I brought this up is that he did mention a few names that I think people will be surprised at. He obviously said that Ampadu could play there. He said Justin could play there. But he also massively praised Alfie Cresswell, who is, of course, an upcoming sort of centre-back in the youth academy at this moment in time. And he actually said in his press conference, and he admitted that 2 weeks ago, he may have pushed for a centre-back to come in, but because of Alfie Cresswell's development of the football club, actually kind of put him off pushing the board to go buy centre-back and sign him, which I do think's a positive for Leeds United. I do think that's a real positive that we've sort of got a youth player coming through. I'm always conscious how good these youth players are, in truth, because I understand the fact that everyone's excited for youth players. And look, I'd love it if our whole team was Leeds sort of players that have been brought through the ranks. But you see a lot of these players compete in the under-23s competitions, and I always think the level of under-23s is pretty poor. And I think you see that quite often when obviously these under-23 players play in that Pizza Trophy Cup or whatever it's called. What's it called? And they play against like Rotherham, and they get beat at Rotherham, and you're like, well, they're losing to League One teams who are near the bottom of League One. Well, they can't be that good then, can they? I know that sounds a bit naive and maybe a bit sort of off-piece, but that's kind of always where I thought with the youth players. So look, I hope Alfie Cresswell has a fantastic career, and I hope if he comes in, does a fantastic job. But I'm always conscious how good the youth players are, in truth. And I know that that might upset a few people, but that's kind of always been my feeling on it. So it kind of feels a bit. Look, as I said, all praise to Alfie, and I hope he's successful at Leeds United. All that's true. Of course, I hope that. But I'm up and down with if the truth of that if that's actually the truth, to be honest. Jack says, evening Scott, evening to you too, Jack. Jake says, do you not think the keeper depth is very low? Well, I don't think the keeper position is very good as a blanket statement, mate, in truth. I mean, I don't even think our starters are that good. I mean, but really, you want 3 keepers at the football club, so you probably want someone like Darlow. You probably want another first choice, but at the moment it's obviously Perri in a roundabout way, although Darlow is starting. and then you want an Alex Kearns who was the third choice keeper on nothing money. You don't really want 4. So that's how our build-up should be. So for me in the summer, I would sign up Darlow to a new contract. Personally, he's out in the summer. I would sign to a new contract. I think he works as a second choice keeper, and then I would still look at recruiting a first choice keeper in the summer, and I would ideally try to get my money back on Lucas Perri. That would be my plan in the summer transfer window. That would be my point of action that I would do. But I mean, let's see how the club perform. Let's see, obviously, if Perri gets himself back into the team. If he does, then maybe he's good for the rest of the season, and we can maybe look at not doing that at all, and we can leave the goalkeeper position and maybe just sign Darlow up. But at this moment, that's kind of where I'm at with it, really. Anyway, then he sort of talks about the expectations, sort of the unity of the club at this moment, and he basically said that he doesn't want to publicly complain about recruitment because it doesn't really help anyone's situation, and I think this is fair. Like, I don't really think that we should be sort of, like, realistically, if he comes in his press conference today and slags off the transfer window, he basically goes, well, the team I've got isn't good enough. And what does that exactly do for players' confidence? They have got to now play 14 cup finals for him for the rest of the season. It doesn't really help. It doesn't really help anyone out at all. So I think he answered this in a really good way. But I think what's also interesting is when he talked about sort of the fans' negativity regarding the transfer window, and obviously there has been a lot of fans' negativity. We've probably given a different viewpoint on this channel, and I know a lot of you guys some of you guys have agreed with me in terms of you don't think it's as horrendous as everyone's sort of saying regarding recruitment. But that's kind of been the situation with it. But there has been a lot of negativity, and he basically said that, look, fans can sort of believe what they want, and fans can sort of, if they feel that they haven't done enough and we haven't done enough in the transfer window, then that's absolutely fine. He doesn't want to dampen expectations, and I think that was a really nice sort of answer from Daniel Farke. And he's in a tricky position because I think, truthfully, I know it said in the Athletic article, I know we were talking yesterday about the idea that actually probably Farke was content with the window. I think he was to an extent, but we talked about it as well, like, all managers want as many players as they can get in the football club. Of course they do. If I'm doing any job and I could have as many good staff as possible to help me do the job, then of course I'd want to do it. Like, for example, even the Leeds Lens as a blanket statement. If I could have a top-notch graphic designer for working for me, and a top-notch editor, and all these things top-notch, then of course I'd want them. I can't afford them because it don't even pay me. So, but if I could in an ideal world, then I'd do that. And it's the same with Daniel Farke. The players that he's got naturally help him get results, and he wants the best players possible in the same way that I'd want the best graphic designers possible. But he can't always have that, and I think that's where the balance comes. And he's obviously brought in to serve and manage the team. That is his fundamental job. So he's kind of got to put up with it. But it's a tricky position when you've got sort of found outbursts and sort of you're getting asked questions like this, because it's the right question to ask, but in the same breath, what's he meant to say? But I did think he answered that well. To be fair. Anyway, let's get to his comments. Ollie says, evening Scott, Friday marks 3 years since Jesse Marsh was sacked. Interestingly, a day after Leeds lost to Nottingham Forest. Fun fact, I didn't know that. I remember that game very well, though. We lost away at Forest 1-0. Brennan Johnson scored a volley in the first half. I'm sure. And then I think it was the first game we saw the McKennie show, which was fantastic, because obviously by the end of it, we were all saying he ate too many burgers. So that you can tell how that one went. But that was his first game, because it was bizarre, wasn't it? Like, we basically got to in the transfer window. We backed him in the transfer window with Voba, McKennie, and Rutter, and then we sacked him within a week. And you're like, well, either don't give him the transfer window in the first place, or if you are going to give him the transfer window, give him a bit longer. But obviously, at that point, Forest were obviously a newly promoted team, and it made sense. But yeah, it was quite bizarre. But I didn't know that. But hopefully that all comes into pass, because actually that year we did actually beat Forest, didn't we? 2-1 at home, I believe. We went 1-0 down, and Sinistera scored that goal, didn't he, when he cut in from the left-hand side and sort of shot to the far corner. Can't remember what our first goal was. Was it Jack Harrison goal? Can't remember, actually. But yeah, that was obviously 2-1. At that point, we might stay up, but it obviously went tits up from there. Jacob says, score predictions for Friday. Ooh, we will talk about this tomorrow, by the way, because tomorrow we'll talk all about the Nottingham Forest game and sort of how I'd line up, how we can get at Forest, all them sort of things. A bit of an old-style preview, which we haven't done for a while. Because truthfully, lads, when the transfer window on, obviously transfer news dominates. But it's not. I think it's nice actually just to talk about the footy again. But I get that people are not as interested in truth. But score predictions, I do actually think we'll win on Friday. I think we've had a really good home record. Forest are not that great away. They've been much better at home themselves as well. They obviously did get a pretty good win recently at Brentford, but for the most part, they haven't done that well. So I'll go with. I think they'll win the game. I think we'll win. I'll go something like 2-0. Gibson White says 2-1. Are you going, Scott, on Friday, Scott? Unfortunately, I'm not, mate. I'm not. Unfortunately, because I try to do these instant match reactions, I can't get to as many games as I want. And truthfully, last time we went, I lost, so you probably don't want me there anyway. I went to... Which last game I went to? I went to the Villa game, and we lost that game. It is nice to go to Ellen Road, though, because even sort of to get the census of the fans and what other people are thinking that go, like, sort of go in the games, it is nice, and I am going to have to get back at one point again this year. But yeah, truthfully, since doing this, I've gone to so many less games than I went to. This is the worst amount of attendances I've been to for games probably since I can remember. I actually am paying for a membership as well, which is probably a waste of time. But oh well. But yeah, I'm not going on Friday. Anyway, thanks all for watching as always. I've got a super chat. Never mind, we are not going anywhere. Jacob says, "Do you think come the end of the season we will stay up?" Oh, the tricky one, Jacob. The tricky one. Do I think we will stay in the Premier League? Oh, I don't think I've ever actually answered this on stream fully. Oh, I don't know. Do you know what it is? I was looking through the fixtures, and obviously in yesterday's show we talked through all the fixtures. And the fixtures give me confidence. I must admit, the fixtures do give me confidence because we've been so good at home, and I think we've got 6 really winnable home games left. Forest, Brighton, Sunderland, Burnley, Wolves, and another one. What's the other one? Forest. So we've got these 6 home games left. So, look, if you ask me on Friday and we've won the game, I will be much more confident. But I do think in them games we should at least better get 3 or 4 wins. And I think if you get 3 wins and 5 draws, that's 40 points. You get 4 wins and 2 draws, that's obviously 40 points. So I'll go with yes. And sorry, that is the most longer worded way of doing it ever, but that's kind of what I think. But also, mate, thanks for the super chat, lad. I always say you do not have to give me money at all. But I really appreciate it because, yeah, I don't get paid anything really for doing this. So I do it for the love of the game, as they say. But yeah, no, thanks for that. Gibson White says, yes, he does think we'll win as well. Anyway, thanks all for watching, as always. And I will see you tomorrow as we talk all over the Forest game. I'm quite looking forward to it, actually. I've got quite a bit to say about it. And obviously, it is definitely Leeds United's biggest game of the season so far. No doubt about it. So we'll talk all about that. But otherwise, everybody, I will see you all later. Enjoy the rest of your Wednesday night, and we'll see you tomorrow for the Leeds versus Nottingham Forest preview. See you later, everybody. Bye for now.